Is Starmer going to have to break arguably his biggest promise that he will not raise income tax? Apparently the 22 billion black hole that they claim they inherited from the Tories is now 50 billion quid, and they've got a heck of a lot of money to find. Where on earth are they going to find it without either breaking Rachel Reeves's fiscal rules that she decided upon herself, or breaking that big pledge not to raise income tax, not to raise taxes on so-called working people that they cannot define? Let's just take a look before we speak to the brilliant Samiksha, who's here to talk about this. Let's take a look at what Keir Starmer said before the general election.
Determined to put money back in the pockets of working people.
We made an absolute commitment in relation to not raising tax on working people.
We will not raise tax on working people. No tax rises for income tax, for national insurance, for VAT.
We will not raise income tax.
And let's compare that to what he has said just a couple of days ago.
In the autumn, we'll get the full forecasts and obviously set out our budget. The focus will be living standards, and we will build on what we've done in the first year of this government. We've stabilised the economy, and that means interest rates have been cut now 4 times. And for anybody watching this on a mortgage, that makes a huge difference on a monthly basis to how much they pay. In the first year, we've raised wages as well, both in the private sector plus the minimum wage, which means people have got a bit more money coming into their pocket. And so at this stage, that'll all be set out in the budget, but the focus will very much be on living standards and making sure people feel better off.
So there we go, Keir Starmer there, refusing to rule out tax hikes in the autumn. Quite a change of tune to what he said before the general election, saying that the focus in the autumn will be on living standards and trying to boast about a few things that I wouldn't exactly call a win. So, for example, he's talking about the interest rate cut that we've just heard about coming from the Bank of England, suggesting that that's because they've stabilised the economy, when actually the reason why the Bank of England are doing that is because the economy hasn't grown very much, not as much as expected. We had 2 months of negative economic growth, and they need to do something to kickstart the dying economy. He also spoke about how he's putting more money in people's pockets because they raised the minimum wage. Well, guess what? The raise in the minimum wage and the big hike in national insurance meant that loads of companies had to fire a load of people who are on minimum wage jobs because they simply don't have enough money to hire them all anymore, and so you've got unemployment going through the roof. So it is not a good state of affairs, and I think a lot of people would say that if they break that huge pledge, they've done a lot of U-turns, but this could potentially be the ultimate one that is the nail in the coffin of Keir Starmer. If they raise income tax in the autumn, that could be the end for them. And it might not just make them unpopular, they're already very unpopular, but it could possibly put them in a situation where they have so much pressure to call a general election that they end up giving in and doing a Liz Truss and giving up after a very short period of time. Of course, they've lasted longer than 49 days, but just over a year is not very long. We've got this petition absolutely skyrocketing. A couple of hours ago it was on 330,000. At the time of filming it's on 378,000. It's probably about to hit 400,000 above, might be at 500,000 by the end of the day. Who knows, but the pressure really is mounting. So as I said, we've got Samiksha here to discuss this with us. So Samiksha, what do you think is going to happen in the autumn budget? What is your prediction?
Yeah, no, I do think that there is really only 3 things that they can do. Either Rachel Reeves breaks her fiscal rules, whatever they are, and also tax rises, which is obviously going to be absolutely disastrous for working people, essentially everyone. And also, we have the option of another general election. But obviously that is, even though it's constitutionally possible, I don't think that it is necessarily going to be something that is going to happen. People are going to be calling. We had a petition before with 3 million or something signatures. So this is yet another petition that's calling for another general election. And I just don't see how this government can last without breaking their promises. And the thing is, they can afford to break their promises. They have this huge majority on just under 40% of the vote, and they've got,
Yeah, so I mean, you're right. It's crazy that we're in this situation where they've got a huge majority. They didn't get a load of votes, but they got a lot of seats. They got a huge majority, yet still they are struggling to get what they want to get done with this country. And that just moves us on nicely to what I was about to ask you, which is that the other option, aside from those three that you've mentioned, is that Rachel Reeves could make cuts to make up this 51 billion black hole. But given that we had, when they just tried to shave 5 billion quid off that welfare bill that is expected to balloon to a total of 100 billion quid a year, an insane figure, you had that huge backbench rebellion for that. Do you think that Labour are really going to manage to get any kind of cuts through this parliament despite their big majority?
I mean, Labour is historically known as the party of spending, of taxing and spending. And so historically, the record doesn't look too good when you want to be able to cut the government, the size of the government, the ballooning size of the government. We have the welfare bill, which you mentioned, which is not looking to come down anytime soon. Yeah, I don't see how they can get themselves out of this situation by cutting, because of the fact that we have these backbenchers who are thinking that this isn't the Labour Party that I signed up to be in. We have already a left-wing rebellion growing. We have a threat on the left for Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana's maybe what if something party. We already have that on the left. We have a threat on the right with reform, and people are thinking that, why should I vote for Labour? Why should I support Labour when we have these alternatives who are already thinking of cutting government spending like reform? So I don't think that it's politically feasible for Labour to be able to promise cutting government spending. That's just not their thing, and that's not what their backbenchers want. And even though they have this huge majority, we already saw the power of the backbenchers when it came to the welfare bill.
Yeah, so so you think cuts are not going to happen. So just to clarify, do you think that she will go for income tax hikes, or do you think that she will go for breaking her fiscal rules, Rachel Reeves, that is?
I do think that she will have to break those fiscal rules. I think that they're looking at income tax as a very sacrament kind of thing, and they don't really want to be able to break that. But even then, I don't think that anything is going to go down well with the public.
I think income tax may well go up. I think that's probably my prediction. I think that would be pretty well. I mean, it's going to be very embarrassing for her either way, or it could be a bit of both, right? She might raise income tax slightly, but she doesn't want to do a very big hike in income tax, and so she just does adjust her fiscal rules. But I don't think there is any way out of this where it is not embarrassing. I mean, the one way out of it where some people think it wouldn't be embarrassing for them is if they make up the money by taxing the rich. But clearly they haven't learned any of their lessons from what has happened with the changes to the non-dom tax regime and the changes to private school tax. These are both changes that were supposed to tax the rich essentially to sort out the country's finances. Rachel Reeves, before she came into power, one of the reasons why they made all of these promises not to raise income tax, national insurance, VAT, is because they thought it's going to be easy. We can raise the money by just doing a big capital gains tax hike. But she got into power, and then the people in the Treasury started doing the maths and running the numbers, and they said this isn't going to raise very much money because people will move their money around, they'll move country. And then she was just desperate to try and raise money from wherever she could, and so then they did hike national insurance, but they said, oh, we're not technically breaking our promise because we're just raising the employers' national insurance rather than on employees, even though we know that the effects of that got passed on to employees and onto consumers in higher costs. We've had loads of people leaving the country, which means that the people who really drive growth in this country, they're all heading off to places like Dubai, and so consequently the growth forecasts just keep getting downgraded and downgraded. And then the other place where they tried to raise some money was with private schools. They decided to slap VAT on private schools. You had private schools crying out saying this is going to mean that we have less money to help people who, for example, have special needs who often choose to go to private schools because they can get better help there for their needs. It means that the people who are not the super rich, but the people who, they just about put the money together to send their kids to a day school, a private school that maybe costs, £12,000-13,000 a year, they're now being pushed out because they just don't have enough money. Combine that with the cost of living crisis, and they're all being forced into into the state schools, so it's not making as much money as expected. And also, what we found out has been happening is you've had a load of parents who can afford to have paid for their kids' school fees for several years. They've paid upfront in advance to avoid the VAT. So a lot of people have got round this already, and so this has been another complete failure from the Chancellor trying to get money out of the rich to avoid raising taxes on so-called working people. So, Samiksha, do you think there is any prospect of them bringing in some sort of wealth tax or some sort of tax that applies to rich people and not more of the working and middle classes that will actually raise them some money?
I hope not. I certainly hope not, because if that does happen, we are in a lot of trouble. But I don't think that clearly Rachel Reeves doesn't understand that, since she's already tried all of these other measures in order to attempt to get some money. I do think that if we do look historically, wealth taxes have been largely, miraculously, a failure, complete failure. So I do think that if she does try to do it, it won't raise very much money. I hope that we can educate people and show them the consequences of wealth taxes, the consequences of rich people leaving our country. We can't afford to hate on the rich. And I do think that this Labour government think that people are still willing to just listen to them, blindly trust them, and enable them to just kick out the rich from our country, the rich who are giving our jobs, when one of their goals is economic growth, and when they're already so disastrously failing at economic growth. I don't think that they can afford a wealth tax. But do I think that it's possible? With this Labour government, anything is possible.
But Samiksha, they keep on telling us, Starmer keeps on telling us that we had the fastest growth in the G7 in the first quarter. What do you make of that?
I do think that the fastest growth in the G7, yes, but it was down to many other factors, not down to the government's own intervention in the economy with their taxes, with their fake promises that they've been making. It wasn't the government, it was the people who drive growth, and we need to stop relying on the government to lead our growth. We need to rely on the people, and we need to start making it easier for people to be able to do business in order to create growth. But this Labour government is not going to allow that to happen.
Yeah, so that figure from the first quarter of the year, it's important to understand the context around that figure. They still keep talking about it, but I mean, they probably know themselves that the economy is going terribly and they're just lying through their teeth, acting as though it's going well. But a couple of things happened there. So first of all, this was all before April sort of time, when it was in April when you suddenly saw people leaving in masses to Dubai. Those people will have been, doing, if they ran businesses here, they'd be doing their last sales in their business before they move abroad. It was also before you had Donald Trump's tariffs come into place, the so-called Liberation Day, and so you had an uptick in exports during the start of the year, whilst businesses decided, we're going to upfront our sales to the US before the tariffs come in. We'll sell a load now, and then we're going to sell much less after that. And that slump afterwards, where we've seen 2 months of negative economic growth, very much reflects that. But still, Keir Starmer keeps parroting that statistic and acting as though the economy is going successfully. So just one more thing before I let you go, Samiksha. So we've spoken about the prospect of a general election. You don't think that is going to happen? That would be like turkeys voting for Christmas, but there are times when, you see this with prime ministers resigning, where you think, why are they going to resign? They surely want to keep the role, but they just become completely out of control of their party and the country, that the herd moves, and the herd moves fast against them, and they end up being toppled. I would agree with you that I think a general election is probably unlikely. That being said, Rishi Sunak called a general election when the Tories were obviously going to lose, which was a little bit strange. But the other thing that could happen is that Keir Starmer could resign, Labour stays in power, we don't have a general election, but we end up with somebody else. Do you think that that might happen? Do you want that to happen? And if it does happen, who do you think would be best to replace him?
Well, I don't think that there are many options who are strong enough in order to lead the Labour Party, but I do think that anybody is better than cardboard Starmer, who doesn't seem to have any personality and doesn't seem to be able to lead this country well. He's talking out of his teeth. He's not able to attract a large voter base in order to actually rally and support him. And we are seeing the rise of personality politics around the world. Look at Donald Trump in America. He has a massive fan base because he has this personality. And Keir Starmer just doesn't have that. So I do think that any politician with some personality would be better. I mean, if you look at Angela Rayner, she does have a personality. I don't agree with her politics, but at least she seems to have some sort of a personality rather than Starmer.
So would you prefer her to Starmer?
I think
because a lot of people would say that she's a lot more ideological. She'd be much more left wing than Starmer. Things would end up going even more socialist than they already are. Even if she might be more interesting to listen to, right? We can all agree she's got more personality than Starmer, but the policies might be worse. And a lot of people would say the same thing about Rachel Reeves. A lot of people think Rachel Reeves is messing up the economy, but you put anybody else in that cabinet in charge and the spending would be even more through the roof. We'd have an even bigger budget deficit. And when we had that meltdown in the markets after Rachel Reeves started crying at PMQs, which I'm sure you would have seen, a lot of people were saying, well, the markets are reacting like this, not because they think, oh, we want Rachel Reeves to go, she's clearly terrible because she's crying. A lot of them were thinking, oh, it looks like Rachel Reeves might be about to resign, and we're worried about that because we want to keep her there because she's not great, but we're so worried about how unfiscally responsible whoever comes after her would be.
Yeah, I mean, we saw with Ed Miliband, who's now on the front benches, we saw how he was as a leader. We can see the whole of the front bench don't seem to be particularly more centrist. I mean, Keir Starmer has managed to expel some of the more left-wing people out of his party. And yeah, I mean, nobody's great. I don't think anybody in the Labour Party is able to get back control of our economy. But I do think that having a replacement might revitalize the Labour Party, and it might be politically better for them, but not necessarily politically better for the country.
Interesting. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Samiksha. We'll leave it there. Hopefully the viewers enjoyed that. Let us know in the comments below what your predictions are. Do you think income tax is going to go up in the autumn? Yes or no? Thanks everyone for watching, and make sure you subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss out on any more videos.